On this edition of Dream Garage, we visit a space fit for an eclectic mix of cars. And later, we see what one man accomplishes with imagination and hard work. I'm your host, Ray Iddings, and our first Dream Garage has something for everyone in the family. This Dream Garage is owned by Bill, a real estate developer. Bill has been collecting cars for years, and not long ago, he was able to build a Dream Garage to house them.
Hi there, my name is Bill Galloway. I'm a real estate investor, live in Pasadena, California. My garage is a property that I bought about 3 years ago. It had been a body shop for a number of years, and I purchased and refurbished the whole property, and very happy how it turned out.
When designing his Dream Garage, Bill considered using a professional.
Many years ago, I did some structural engineering and drafting at the time. So I have a fairly good eye for looking at things and making changes. When I saw the property, I had an architect that I was going to use to redesign it. He could never come up with what I wanted, so I decided to go ahead and do it myself on my own. And I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
Renovating the garage took some time. The ceilings had to be sandblasted to remove old paint. Bill intended to do the same with the brick walls, but the brick was in bad shape. So Bill covered the walls with plaster and paint.
In Southern California here, we have to be concerned about earthquakes. I wanted to make sure that the building would be structurally sound, so I was able to put my steel girders in and my shear walls. And it was not really that big of a challenge, but just wanted to make sure that everything would be fine. In the ceiling areas there, it was old plaster and paint that had to be sandblasted off. On the ceiling, we sandblasted the beams and keep them as natural as possible. And I'm happy the way it turned out.
Bill's car collection is worth protecting. He's been collecting for years and hopes to hand these beauties down to his sons.
My first car, '63 Corvette, I bought it when I was in my 20s. And I was in the service when I had that car and went to Vietnam, spent a year in Vietnam, kept the car at my parents' house. When I came back, I was going to be stationed in North Carolina. So what I did is decided to drive my '63 Corvette back to North Carolina, to Fort Bragg, and actually I had in the back of my mind of bringing a bride back with me. What's interesting about that story is that's where I met my wife. I'm not sure if she liked the Corvette or she liked me. Married her while I was back there and brought her back with me. And my wife and I, Brenda, we've been married for over 40 years now, so maybe it was a good move. A 2011 Mercedes SLS. You know, a lot of guys, they kind of stick with a certain vintage of cars, but I'm all over the place. But anyway, this is a SLS that I bought, and it's a newer car. Very seldom drive it, but I like the looks of the car, and so it was something that I'll probably keep in the garage for a while until I decide to move on to something different. So what I would like to do is also show you one of my vintage Mercedes convertible 1961 SL Roadster. What's interesting about this car, this is the first year that they put disc brakes on the car, so it is fairly unique. I've had this car for over 25 years. And this is one of my babies, and I really adore this car. And as far as my concern, I think it's one of my best cars in the collections. I've kept it in this condition the whole time, and it's a car that I'll probably keep and just pass on to my heirs, my two boys. I'm sure they would love to have this one day. What we have here is a '65 Porsche Cabriolet. I've had this car for 25 years also. It's a car that I restored about 3.5 years ago. And they did a very good job with restoring this car. It was just all original. It was all original, and so I decided to restore it. What's interesting about it is that about 10 years ago, I was going to sell it, but my son said that, "Dad, you can't sell this car. We've had it for so long, so we can't sell it." So I'm glad that he did give me that advice not to sell the car. This is one of my Ferraris that I own. It's a 250 PF Coupe. This is a car that I bought about 3 years ago. This particular car, I'm going to take it on a 1,000-mile run. It's called the California Millet, and it's one of my babies also. It's a keeper.
Car rallies are common events for collectors. It provides an environment for the owner to not only show off their car, but also spend several days driving something most people don't get to see every day.
This is one of my newer Ferraris. It's called a Maranello. It's a 2001 Maranello. It's a very interesting car. I saw this car about 5 years ago in Florida. My wife and I, we flew down to look at the car, and for some unknown reason, I didn't buy the car, and kept kicking myself. I says, why didn't I buy this car? So about 2 years later, I'm still looking for one. I happened to be looking on the internet, and I saw a car that kind of caught my eye, and what I did was I had kept a serial number to the car that I saw in Florida, and looking on the internet, I saw this particular car, and this car had made its way to San Francisco, which I thought was quite interesting in that 2-year period. So I gave the guy a call, and I found out that he wanted to sell the car. So I said, maybe twice around, so I must buy this car. I think the car is meant for me. So anyway, I ended up making a deal with the guy, and of course I did buy it at a little bit cheaper price than I had previously saw the car at 2 years earlier. It's a keeper. I really like the car. Drive it every once in a while. I really don't drive my cars too often, but I just like looking at them. They're like a piece of art to me. I had new cabinets installed. Also, I had them custom made, and I was able to find this old Shell gas pump. It adds to my collection. And also, I would like to show you that I do have a Shell clock up here that kind of matches the gas pump. So this is kind of an interesting little gadget also.
Bill's dream garage has everything a man could need when taking some personal time.
I'd like to take you guys into my little bar area. So I could have had 2 more cars here, but I decided to go ahead and put myself a bar in. So when my buddies come by, they can have a little glass of wine or a beer, whatever the case may be, watch a little football. So it turned out real nice also. When I bought this property, I had a little extra space available here. This was like an old tool room. And my wife and I, Brenda, decided that we wanted to take this and make a kitchen out of it. So we were calling it Grandma's Kitchen. In honor of my mom, we called her Grandma. And she did a lot of baking. So it turned out really neat, and so it's a lot of fun.
When building his dream garage, Bill made sure there was something for his wife Brenda to enjoy. So he helped build a garden in the back.
Being from a farm back in Oklahoma, I've always desired planting, landscaping, and things of that nature. And we have a garden on the property. I do a lot of the gardening and landscaping myself. This is my therapy for the day, and I just really enjoy that. Sometime in the afternoon, I'll come over here and play around with the cars, and come in the bar and have myself a little cocktail or whatever the case may be, and just enjoy it.
Some of life's finest moments can happen in a garage, whether it's wrenching on cars, hanging out with friends, or just enjoying a drink with the wife. Dream garages make it a reality. Our next dream garage shows how one owner got the most out of a small space. Stay tuned for more Dream Garage. Some of you may wonder what it would take to have your own dream garage. Well, this one's for you. See what you can make happen with a small space and a tight budget.
This garage was put together during the 2007 Writers Guild strike. My wife and I were both on strike, and I took the time when I couldn't work to finally clean out my old garage and put together a room that I could use for 3 major things. I do some metal fabrication and welding, I do some carpentry, and I do work on my hobby car, which is a 1972 Porsche. My garage might work as the ultimate garage given a very specific set of constraints. And in that sense, I think a lot of people can identify with it because it's the size of garage that a lot of people have, and I had the kind of budget that ordinary people have.
Jack was able to retrofit and furnish his garage on a tight budget. Had he not done the work himself, he easily could have spent 10 times what he did.
My garage, to me, is as much as I could do given the constraints of a 20-foot by 20-foot box that couldn't be modified. and a budget that topped out at a fairly ordinary figure of $3,500. Now, what do you get for $3,500? Well, if you are patient and willing to take other people's cast-offs and damaged pieces, you can have a garage with 10 work surfaces in it. It has distinct areas for different types of work. It has a floor lift for the car. It has a great deal of storage space. And the thing that I think distinguishes it in a number of ways, it's a remarkably simple and kind of calm place when you're working in it, which I think makes it more pleasant to get things done here. The trick when you're dealing with just a 20-foot by 20-foot space is to fit as much as you can into that space without it feeling cluttered. My approach was a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, maybe. You want to get as much functionality as you can in, and you need to use every inch in order to do it. An illustration is, I wanted to have a sink here, but I've got this odd little alcove space with the door. So I took a dented up stronghold cabinet like this one and started cutting it up with a saw. I cut the top and the bottom of the cabinet to make this lower cabinet here. The middle section got cut down to make the side section there. The back became this counter surface. The top got cut up and turned into these sort of mailbox style doors. What you get is a work surface that allows you to still go in and out the door and use a piece of the garage that otherwise would have been wasted space.
Everything in Jack's dream garage has been reimagined. What was once an IKEA storage container was repurposed into a multi-level storage container. Nothing is as it once was.
This IKEA sells as a kitchen cart, but since none of my toolboxes move, I use it to move the tools I'm using on a particular project to the project. It costs a lot less than the famous Hazet Assistant toolbox, which the designer clearly was inspired by. Everything does have a place in this garage. It can go back to its place lightning fast, like a reset button. And that allows a very small space to not become congested, to not become cluttered, but to remain very functional every time you walk in it.
Every inch of this dream garage is customized to Jack's needs, and all the materials used have been altered to accommodate the small space.
This little area I jokingly call my compliance center. I'm not always the most skilled craftsman, but I've got 20 hammers and a lot of lubricant and a very stout bench here, which will solve a great deal of problems. As they say, if a hammer doesn't fix it, then it's definitely an electrical problem. I used an old stronghold cabinet here. I love stronghold cabinets. They're made of 12-gauge steel. They can hold 1,900 pounds per shelf. Do you need that in a garage? No. But if you're going to put an inch-thick piece of steel plate like this on top of one and hammer on it, you want to know nothing's going to give, and this thing is held up beautifully. Industrial cabinets, like made by Lista or Equipto, Vidmar, like that, are very expensive. I love using them, however. So whenever I can, I'll buy up a damaged one. This work area, where I wanted to have an area where I could sit while I worked, is made out of a single cabinet, sort of like this one. I wanted to use it to support the bench, so I cut it in half. The trick was, it was a 9-drawer cabinet, so I was going to have 5 on one side and 4 on the others. What I did was took a plate of steel and made a false front for the extra space I had. I took my air reel and turned it sideways and welded it to the back of that so that I have access to air, access to a couple of electrical plugs, and I'm saved the annoyance of a drawer opening into the handle of my vise here. Conversely, the tall cabinet you see here was actually 2 cabinets. One had a broken bottom, one had a broken top. So I cut off the broken bottom, cut off the broken top, welded them together to make one tall work storage cabinet. This is my drill press. It's a great old Rockwell drill press. It was a floor model that was damaged. I cut out the damaged section and it became a benchtop model, which is what I had room for. Gave it some paint, a little restoration. Works like a champ. When I put my drill press on my bench, finally, I realized I had blocked the one space in the entire garage where a clock could be hung so that I could see what time it was. So what I did was went looking for a two-faced clock, the kind they used to have in schools and airports. I found them, but they were expensive. So what I did was bought two inexpensive red clocks, made a bracket, mounted them back to back, and instead of a $200 vintage clock, I've got a $40 vintage-looking clock.
This has to be the Swiss Army knife of dream garages. There is an area with a tool waiting to complete any job.
When I say Swiss Army knife, here's a table that illustrates it pretty well. This is where I keep my grinders for metal and a sander and a bandsaw for wood. I arranged it so that I could have access to all of them. I made it at the same height as all of my other benches, which allowed me to put my table saw, usually something that clutters up a corner of the garage and only gets used occasionally, to nest underneath it. And then, seeing that it fit there, I welded on a couple of strips of 1-inch steel to hold my grinders so that the whole thing becomes a very compact way to use, 5, 6 different tools in a way that generally they don't interfere with each other, which was the real accomplishment of it. And it's handy to have all of your grinders within reach when you're working.
Welding, carpentry, and auto repair are typically not done in the same small space. But Jack kept this in mind when bringing harmony to this dream garage.
You can't have sawdust near an engine. You can't have metal shavings near an engine. You don't want to have welding near wood shavings. I've set up the garage as well as I can to do those irreconcilable things. I have to keep the place clean, but I've made a place that's very easy to take from disastrously messy to very clean in 30 minutes of cleanup.
The ingenuity Jack displays in this dream garage is remarkable.
This center island type of bench was a matter of thinking a little bit outside the box, using what's common in a kitchen in a garage. It was partly necessity, because I have a pillar in the center of my garage, and another opportunity to store more stuff. I got these two cabinets. Problem was, these benches are 30 inches tall, and all of the work surfaces in my garage, I try and keep it 37 inches. So I had to build a base to put the 30-inch cabinets on. I thought about that a little bit and decided I could use that as storage for long cheater bars, pony clamps, and other long stock, not waste that little bit of space. Now, having a bench here at the mouth to the garage is great, but the trick was, how do you light it? I like having task light where I'm working. I decided I would try and come up with a way to light it that would still allow the garage door to raise and lower. So you had to mount the lights in a way that didn't go directly to the ceiling. What I did was I made a long cantilevered steel arm, which I welded together and attached to the wall on the side, which allows, like a fishing pole, a boom to come out and hold these two lamps. The lamps themselves are also pretty inexpensive. These are from a local baking supply place. They are cake pans that I guess they make wedding cakes with, but it's aluminized steel. I cut a couple of holes in it, put some light bulbs in it, and suddenly I have pendulum lights.
Every inch of this dream garage has a purpose.
There might be one perfect workbench out there, but for me, I knew that in working on a project, workbenches fill up and you need to move on to open space again. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted as many benches as I could fit. Most of the time, the car is parked here, so you can't put anything permanent in this space. I had this entire wall, which I thought I can put workbenches over there, but they're gonna have to fold up. These are fold down workbenches. One of them is for welding, so it's a bit heavier because it's steel. It swings down from the wall. I use the space behind it to store welding specific clamps, things that I will really only need when I'm welding at the table. The other fold down bench is for woodworking, but importantly, they're all at 37 inches height, so when you're cutting 20-foot stock in a 20-foot garage, you can span all of the benches and cut stuff that's as long as you want.
The Lift and Jack's dream garage wasn't intended to lift cars. In fact, it's a lift table meant to lift heavy objects into a storage space. Since Jack's Porsche sized up with the table, it's a perfect fit.
It has a 48-inch square top that is going to come flat in contact with the car. But I have an old Porsche 911, which has the engine in the back, and in the center, where all the jacking points are, is a 48-inch square piece of sheet metal. I'd be able to hit all of the jacking points without interfering with anything that I wanted to do on the car. In the floor here is the automotive lift. The frustrating thing about a 2-post lift, a 4-post lift, a scissors lift, is that when you're not using it, you're often tripping over it. This, I tiled to match the rest of the floor. The car has been sort of adapted to work with this. All I have to do when the car is parked here is push a button and up I go. My lift itself, because it's topped with a square table, is also a work surface. And it's a work surface where you can adjust the height. In painting cabinets for my kids' rooms, I'm able to throw a drop cloth over that, put on a set of bookshelves I'm painting, and move it up and down so that I can always see into every crevice of what I'm painting.
I think we all can agree Jack has done an amazing job turning this into a functional work area. And the bonus is it's pretty easy on the eyes, especially when the Porsche is inside.
I have found a way to make what is often the most useless space in a homeowner's piece of property, maybe the most useful space in my property. And the great thing about it has been the number of skills I've acquired in putting the garage itself together that I can then carry on and continue to use in that garage.
Jack and his dream garage are ready for any task that may come up. This could possibly be the best use of 400 square feet. Join us next time to see more dream garages.
Like this show? Want more? Then head to WatchPTTV.com, the new 100% free PowerTube TV streaming network. Home of the best classic and new motorsports racing and build shows on the web.